I never thought as a physician I would actually see the cured cancer, the end of cancer, the moment that a single blood vessel touches a tiny microscopic tumor. You will grow 16,000 times in size in just 2 weeks. We pull our hair out trying to figure out, like, what's going on? How do we make people do better? Well, it turns out that a 1 centimeter breast cancer already has 1 billion cancer cells that have already multiplied, that microscopic cancer multiplied 1 billion times. That's the smallest we can feel. The groups of responders, people who did well versus going to do well for immunotherapy, except for one thing. That one thing was one bacteria, Akkermansia muciniphila, which turns out that there are certain foods you can eat that grow Akkermansia. What are those foods? And what they found is that women who had excess body fat over the period of 13 years had a 3-fold increase in the risk of developing breast cancer. So with this kind of knowledge, what do we do with cancer? Not just breast cancer, but in general. Number one, I never thought as a physician I would actually see the cure for cancer, the end of cancer. But actually, I've told you that I have now seen where the end of cancer is coming from. I've seen how the war is going to finish because I've had well over a dozen patients, and there are hundreds of people like this who are starting to form that can go from stage 4 cancer, that's game over cancer, to stage 0. We can do this, and it's not for everybody yet, but we're beginning to see where the light at the end of the tunnel is, and it involves your immune system. Some of the remarkable scientific breakthroughs are teaching us that our body heals itself against diseases as serious as cancer, and ways that the pharmaceutical industry can't buy or do, but it really relies on the body. So when you talk about food as medicine or medicine as medicine, none of them are as powerful as what the body is hardwired to do by itself. In 100 people who were receiving immunotherapy for different types of cancer, if you look at the difference between people who responded, lived, did well versus people who didn't respond, didn't do well, and died, all right? And that's the frustration. With the types of treatments my mom had, you know, some people do well, some people don't do well. We pull our hair out trying to figure out what's going on. How do we make people do better? Well, it turns out that when you compare everything, gender, age, comorbidities, all the other genetic factors, the research that was presented showed that there were no differences between the groups of responders, people who did well versus people who didn't do well for immunotherapy, except for one thing. So that one thing was one bacteria. The responders had one bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila. So most bacteria have a genus and species, first name, last name. The first name is Akkermansia. The last name is muciniphila. Okay, it likes to grow in mucus, muciniphila, and there's a lot of mucus in the colon. That's the area. And this model, the blue area. So Akkermansia grows right here in the cecum, which is the pouch in the colon right at the beginning before you take the up elevator to the top of the colon. That's where it grows. If the people had that Akkermansia, they would respond to immunotherapy. So what the research did, she took out the Akkermansia and brought it to her lab of the responders from humans and gave it to mice who were not responding to immunotherapy. Boom. She'd resurrect the immune response to kill the cancer. Okay. So this is one of the first bacteria, and there may be many, many that we haven't yet discovered. All right. So like my whole career has all been about discovery. There may be more bacteria, but we discovered at least one, the presence of which seems to be absolutely vital if you are a patient receiving immunotherapy, a type of immunotherapy called checkpoint inhibitors. If you want to tip the odds in your own favor of being a responder, Now, how do you get acromesia? Well, at the time, there were no acromesia probiotics. Now, you can actually find acromesia probiotics, but back then when this was first discovered, you had to grow your own acromesia, DIY acromesia. So how do you grow it? It turns out that there are certain foods you can eat that will help grow acromesia. What are those foods? Pomegranate juice and pomegranate seeds will grow acromesia. Cranberry juice and dried cranberries will grow acromesia. Concord grape juice and Concord grapes will grow acromesia. Chili peppers, watch them grow. Regrow, Chinese black vinegar. Ever go to dim sum and have soup dumplings? The black vinegar sauce they use as a condiment for the soup dumplings is Chinese black vinegar. That will prompt your body to grow acromesia as well. Every day, every 24 hours, there are 10,000 mistakes made in your body that your body doesn't catch, which continue to propagate in the document of our body as time goes on. 10,000, each of those is a microscopic cancer. A microscopic cancer is just that. It's microscopic. It's too small to be seen with the naked eye, but it's abnormal. And that thing could turn into a big tumor. That could eventually kill you. So why don't we die from cancer all the time? Now, this is actually something that I see as a physician. I have a patient diagnosed with cancer. They always ask me, Dr. Lee, why me? Why did I get breast cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, or a brain tumor? A very, very natural question. And I do my best to try to provide an empathic answer to that question. But as a researcher, I have a more interesting question. Given the number of mutations that occur in our body every single day, why don't we get cancer more often? What do we all get cancer? As kids, cancer can happen in children, but not as often as we have mutations. And it turns out this was the great unlock for me in terms of health. The reason that we don't become more sick from all kinds of diseases, including cancer, is because our body is hardwired with its own health defense systems, so that we've got these swashbuckling defenses that are firing on all cylinders all day long from the moment we're born until our very last breath. These systems that are inside our body defend our health, including the microscopic cancers. It spots them, takes them out, kind of like a police cruiser patrolling a quiet neighborhood, sees a drug dealer on the corner, pops them in the back of the police vehicle, and takes them away, cleaning up the neighborhood. That's how our body naturally cleans up these microscopic cancers. And so when you talk about cancer as a scary disease, you're thinking about the person whose body has failed to detect and eliminate the microscopic cancers. It has become large enough to actually become a threat. Now, here's a question for you. So we tell women to actually do a self-breast exam when they're taking a shower. Look for lumps or bumps. And, if you find one, certainly go to your doctor immediately for an exam. The smallest cancer that you could feel with a trained person can feel with their hands in the breast is 1 centimeter in diameter. A 1 centimeter breast cancer already has 1 billion cancer cells that have already multiplied. That microscopic cancer multiplied 1 billion times. That's the smallest one you can feel. Now, immune systems, not taking them out. All right. So you need a better immune system if you want a shot at this, not just chemo or hormonal therapy. And that's where some of these incredible advances are taking place. But there's another one. In order to feed 1 billion cancer cells, you need blood vessels to feed them. So the cancers, as they get bigger, hijack our own circulation to feed themselves. It's kind of like terrorists kicking in the cockpit door to take over the controls of the plane. They want to actually get your blood vessels to feed themselves. Now, normally, the body knows how to control those blood vessels. It's called angiogenesis. Angio meaning blood vessels, genesis meaning how the body grows and controls them. That's my area of research. So naturally, Our body knows how to prevent blood vessels from feeding cancers, and yet knows how to direct blood vessels to feed healthy tissues. So guess what? A 1 centimeter tumor with 1 billion cancer cells is fed by 100 million blood vessels coursing into the tumor to feed them. And we've studied this in a laboratory. The moment that a single blood vessel touches a tumor, even a tiny microscopic tumor, it will grow 16,000 times in size in just 2 weeks. So with this kind of knowledge, what can we do with cancer? Not just treat cancers, but in general. Number one, we know that if you boost your immune system with foods, exercise, diet, and lifestyle, you're going to actually make your immune defense a lot stronger to control your body and wipe out those microscopic cancers. That's why a healthy diet and lifestyle lower the risk of cancer. That's why eating the right foods to boost your immunity can substantially lower your risk of cancer as well. We also know that you can eat foods that support, prop up, and fortify your body's natural ability to control blood vessels. Keep those blood vessels where they're supposed to be and get rid of those blood vessels where you don't want them to be, which is kicking in the cockpit to take over your circulation and feed cancers. So if you eat foods like that, or anti-angiogenic foods, you've got staple foods like coffee and tea. Both of those contain natural substances that cut off the blood supply and starve cancers. That's a good thing. So that's why we know what we do with our diet can actually help to lower the risk of cancer as well. A study done by Cornell in New York looking at Swedish women who were normal body size or skinny. So you've heard of skinny fat. This is what they were studying. And they looked at these women to see, they did it, body fat they had, and then they followed them over 13 years. And then she found that women who did not have extra body fat had, normal risk of breast cancer, but women who had skinny fat, remember, all the women in the study, and so 3,000 women actually were normal body size. They weren't supermodels, but they were just normal size women. Some of them were slimmer than others, but none of them were weights. None of them were overweight, just normal size. But they knew at the baseline what the DEXA scan showed. What they found is that women who had excess body fat over the period of 13 years had a 3-fold increase in the risk of developing breast cancer, and it's linked to higher inflammatory markers in their bloodstream, which makes total sense. The leaking body cream, the leaking inflammation, in a skinny tube or normal size tube, normal suitcase. Look, the suitcase can't expand bigger. It's got a finite size, but it's leaking out. And this is because cancer thrives in an inflammatory environment. If you have inflammation, even a microscopic cancer like we talked about, but a small tumor, putting inflammation in the environment of a cancer is like pouring gasoline on a boom. You're going to have to create a bonfire all over again. That's how dangerous inflammation is. So that's why excess visceral fat, inflammatory fat, is so dangerous and linked to cancer. And by the way, not just breast cancer. It turns out that excess visceral fat has been linked to 14 other cancers, increasing the risk of 14 other cancers. Everything from ovarian, lung, breast, prostate. It's a growing list of cancers that seem to put you at higher risk if you have high levels of visceral fat. And it makes total sense. Give it the inflammation. Look at all these organs packed in. You've got your liver, you've got your stomach, you've got your colon and your small intestines. That's packed into the tube. All right. It's kind of like packing for vacation. Some people are really, really skilled at packing. They can actually fold their socks and earn to wear in their pants. And it's like, oh my, you're a genius. You're a packing genius, right? Now, visceral fat grows between those folded shirts and pants, and it fills a lot of space in there. When you have too much of it, not only does it fill up at the suitcase of your body, the tube of your body, but it starts to push on organs, which is not healthy because it's all packing inside the spaces, the potential spaces in there. And then when it grows beyond its own blood supply, the visceral fat starts to starve. It becomes hypoxic, meaning it's not getting any oxygen bigger than the amount of blood vessels that are growing in there. And now you've got the center of the fat, start of oxygen, inflammatory cells start moving in. And now you've got this fat that's outgrown in some blood supply that's now becoming very inflammatory. And because it's packed all throughout the tube of your body into the suitcase of your body, it's leaking out that inflammation everywhere. So think about it. Like if you had been neatly packed in a suitcase and you're like, I'm going to put some lotion and cream, canistered lotion and cream. I want to pack it everywhere into putting spaces. Okay, look, Stephen, pack a few, but let's stop right there. No, I'm going to pack like 20 or 30 of them, and you keep on stuffing it. Even though the suitcase is a hard suitcase and you put a lot in there, now you're starting to press on the clothing. You're going to scrunch up your pants, and here in the body, you're scrunching up your organs. Now, why don't we make one of those tubes of cream? Let's break one of them open, and now it's leaking, all right? And that's what's happening when your fat is so inflamed, it starts to inflame. Now, we'll mention that the cream starts to leak out into the interstices of your suitcase. You've got a suitcase that looks skinny on the outside, just like a carry-on, but now all the organs, all the clothes you pack so neatly are squeezed and scrunched up, and now the lotion is leaking everywhere. That is the analogy of excess body fat in a small container spreading out from pressing the organs and leaking out, and that's why it's dangerous. We did research with the Angiogenesis Foundation, the nonprofit. I looked at that to study different types of teas, green tea, Japanese tea, Chinese jasmine tea, and English tea. We were always assuming, again, this is the power of food as medicine research, that the green tea was going to be the best. I'd always heard that Japanese green tea is going to be like the ultra best. And what we found was that English tea specifically, or all gray tea, actually is the most potent when it actually supported your blood vessels, your body's defense system for angiogenesis to keep your circulation healthy. Wow, what a surprise that is. And this spoke to me about the fact that we can't make assumptions. We need to look at facts. We need to look at data. And so I'm a big fan of our old gray now. Now, what might make Earl Grey its superpower? Well, this is where knowing a little bit about what you're eating is actually useful, because Earl Grey is a fermented black tea. It's got bergamot in it, and bergamot is a kind of citrus, so maybe it's combining those ingredients that actually provides the superpower. But I do see much on this tray. I want to tell you about matcha, because matcha is truly a super enriched polyphenol enriched tea. A lot of people don't realize it. There's no tea bag in it. It's no worry. So a lot of people think about matcha as just another green tea, but it's not another green tea. It is made with green tea leaves, the same kind of green tea leaves, but as you would find in any green tea, it's what's the composition of moshura. Moshura is green tea that is, before it's ready for harvest, is grown under a shade that changes its chemical structure, natural chemical structure a little bit. So it's got a lot of potency to it. And what happens with matcha is they take the tea leaf, they take out the stem of the green tea leaf, and they ground up the actual leaf into a powder. Now, what's in that green tea leaf? You've got not just some of the polyphenols that might steep out in the cup, whether you're using a tea bag or loose leaf tea, you're getting all the polyphenols suspended in that. So now you get 100% polyphenols in matcha. So go ahead, do it. That one's good. All right. Okay. For matcha, and because you're getting the tea leaf around to it, you're also getting your dietary fiber. The dietary fiber is good for your gut health, your microbiome, good for your metabolism, good for lowering inflammation. The polyphenols found in green tea have also been found in the lab to kill breast cancer stem cells. What's a breast cancer stem cell? What's a stem cell? Cancer stem cells help the cancers come back. If you get cancer, you get it treated. One thing you don't want it to do is to come back. And by the way, other foods can also kill cancer stem cells. Purple potatoes that you might have seen in the market, they're kind of purpley looking on the outside. Slice it open, dark purple on the inside. All right. Turns out that those purple potatoes have something called anthocyanins. Purple potatoes have been studied in the lab, okay, at Penn State University, and they've been shown to kill colon cancer stem cells, which contribute to colon cancer coming back. Angiogenesis is how our body grows and maintains our circulation. A lot of people don't know this, but our circulation is one of our body's health defense systems. And it's so extensive that in a typical adult, there are 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels packed inside our body. These are the highways and byways that deliver blood to every organ and tissue. But that means that they also deliver the air we breathe, the oxygen we breathe in, and the nutrients that we're eating. So we eat good things, and those are going into our bloodstream and our blood vessels. Our angiogenesis system is delivering them to every cell in the body. Now, you eat something bad, or similarly, you breathe something in bad. Those blood vessels are delivering something negative. And now, inside the blood vessels is a lining. It's called the endothelial layer, which is like a clear plastic wrap inside the blood vessel. This layer is similar to ice on an ice skating rink, ensuring that everything in the blood vessels flows smoothly without getting caught on the walls. When you have cardiovascular disease, too much salt, hypertension, or diabetes, it's like damaging the lining of your body's defense system. This can have deadly consequences, as it's like scraping up the ice on an ice skating rink. If there are too many skaters, after a while, the rink becomes unusable. Similarly, in your bloodstream, elements of your blood can get caught along the walls and start to build up. This is how blood vessels narrow. One of the roles of the endothelial layer is to deliver oxygen and nutrients to tissues that need it to maintain health. However, because it's so critical, it's also very carefully controlled. So you don't have blood vessels growing where they should not be growing, like in your joints or in your eyes, or of course in cancers. You definitely don't want to be feeding cancers by delivering oxygen or nutrients to them. If you took a tumor and sequenced all the genes, you'd find every mutation, every typographical error that we talked about earlier. That's in that cancer. Those are the smoking guns of the cancer. Now, what if I took a piece of normal blood, normal cells, and sequenced that too, right? Now, people who are oncologists or scientists might say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's double the waste of effort, because now you're going to sequence the human genome twice in a single patient. And what are you going to do with all that information? This is where technology fits in, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Let's now have a computer compare normal cells with tumor cells back and forth, subtracting out all the mutations found in normal cells, leaving only the smoking gun mutations in the cancer. A couple hundred are going to be left. Those are the smoking guns. Those are the doers that led to this cancer. Now, imagine, and I'm going to give you an analogy here. Do you remember that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report? Yeah, so you remember like he was wearing these gloves and you have a glass pane and you can actually move the things around on the glass with your fingertips, right? So now imagine you can take these human cancer mutations on the bottom of this glass screen and you can just randomly with your fingers pick out 20 random mutations and move them up on the screen. All right. Now you've just picked out the mutations and now you can connect the mutations together. I call it a pearl necklace. Imagine every mutation is a pearl and you connect them together with the string that connects a pearl necklace. Now you take in the tumor, find out the doers, the smoking guns. Now we've strung them together. Okay. This is the most wanted sign that you would actually place out for the criminal. And now imagine you hit print technology, and now you have a protein printer that prints out those smoking guns as a protein full of your own individual cancer of that particular person. Now you take that protein and you inject it under the skin, and you're challenging your own immune system. You're vaccinating yourself with your own cancer, and you're causing your own immune system to say, aha, this is a bad guy. We're going to develop antibodies to go find our immune system. We're going to get ratcheted up to go find that cancer. Well, this is happening right now in clinical trials. I have a colleague named Saskia Biscuit that is actually developing peptide vaccine treatments against cancer. And if you want to see some amazing results, there was a paper we published in Nature Communications about a year ago that showed in more than 100 people with glioblastoma, and that is a game over brain cancer. Nobody lives more than a couple of years with us. That, with this treatment, we've been able to actually show that some patients with their own immune system woken up can actually keep them alive and cancer-free. Now, brain cancer, like that, is a no-win situation, from possible to possible. And if you like that video, and then you're going to love this one. Check it out.